Hello, here we are again. Welcome to the Renny Show. Hello, Jenny.
Good day, evening, hello. In the usual spirit of transparency, we are recording this show for Wednesday. So we won't be live on Wednesday, although you will be seeing this live on Wednesday, but we are actually recording it.
Yes, because unfortunately I'm not available to be live on Wednesday, so we're doing the right thing and being honest. You'll still get us as you find us, unedited and in our full glory, but we just happen to have pre-recorded it on Monday night instead. So, but if you're listening, happy Wednesday, or actually if you're listening via the podcast and catching up later, happy whatever day it is when you happen to listen, because you can listen any day of the week, any day of the year. So it seems like it's been ages since it was just the two of us on the show. We've been having some fabulous guests on, haven't we? So it'll be nice to spend some time just the two of us. And then at the end, we'll tell you about our next exciting guest who's coming up, which I'm really looking forward to. So I guess we might as well just dive straight in. So my first question for you, Jenny, is do you have a favourite quote or just any quote that you happen to like? It doesn't have to be a favourite.
Oh, I love a quote.
Me too.
And I I love and because I've been around a bit, there are many, aren't there? So
Yes,
can I have two? And they're
you
probably ones that
can.
people know very well, but I just think they bear repeating. So
Yes.
I think the first one is attributed to Henry Ford, the car manufacturer. And he said, whether you can or whether you can't, what you believe is true. It's
Yes,
whether you think you can or you think you can't. You're
you're right.
absolutely right.
Yeah,
I messed
absolutely.
that one up, didn't I? Um, so I love that because it's such a it's such a simple and yet really complex quote.
Yes.
Um, And the second one, which really fundamentally has helped as a recovering people pleaser, those who
Okay.
follow me and know me well know that I always describe myself as a people pleaser in recovery because I don't ever think you're cured because it's a personality trait. Um, and Brené Brown said that clarity is kind. And that quote for me really helped me put boundaries in place that helped me
Yes.
personally, and also helped the people who I was interacting with and having relationships with, because actually everybody knows where they stand. And that was something that I
Yeah.
found quite tricky for many years.
Okay. Oh, I love that. I mean, yeah. By the sound of it, it means so much because of the impact it's had, and that's the wonderful thing. Some of that they're just words at the end of the day, but they can mean so much, can't they? So I think sometimes quotes can feel a bit overdone, but sometimes we just find quotes that really mean something to us. So I'm right with you. The Henry Ford one is on my list of favourites because I have a list of favourite quotes. I can't keep it to one either. Although I was worried you were going to say you can have any colour as long as it's black. One of his other famous quotes, but no.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
it wasn't that. It wasn't that one. No.
So one of my favourites is, and I don't actually know who this is attributed to. Maybe I ought to try and do a bit of research, but I remember seeing it on a little plaque that you could buy to put on your wall, in a shop years ago. And it was, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, but today is a gift. And I just find that so, so meaningful because when we talk about mindfulness and being in the present, not spending our time worrying about the past that's already gone that we can't change, not spending our time worrying about the future that we also can't change, we can't particularly impact what's going to happen. We don't know whether it's going to rain or snow or be sunny tomorrow, so why worry about it? And I think that just sums it up quite succinctly. So I like that one, but I just wish I knew who said it.
It's wonderful. That Yeah, I mean there are so many different quotes, aren't there?
Yeah.
And actually we could say to our listeners, if there's any particularly fabulous quotes that you think Rachel and I should add to our list of
Ooh,
fabulous
yes.
quotes, we would love you to either drop us a message on LinkedIn or Facebook, and we would be only too delighted to add them to our list. And you never
Absolutely.
know, they might make an appearance in a future post or a future show.
Absolutely. Yes. Very exciting. Okay. Over to you, Jenny. What's your first question?
So my first question is, what's the best piece of advice that you have ever been given by a child or a young person?
Right, I'm really sorry. You broke up slightly there. You're going to have to repeat that for me.
Sorry, what's the best piece of advice
Oh, okay.
that you have ever been given by a child or a young person?
Ooh, wowzers. Gosh, that's a stonker of a question. Um, okay, because funnily enough, if you've seen my post on LinkedIn today, I was talking about the lessons we can learn from our children and how much they have to teach us. So the best piece of advice.
That might have influenced my choice of question, Rachel.
Yeah, funny old thing. Oh dear. Okay. I'm just trying to think of if I've actually been given advice by a young person. I'm sure I have by the children. Um, just trying to think. Gosh, my mind's gone blank. I'm sure there's been much wisdom. I know there's been many crazy words and made up things that have been said that stick in my mind. Um, in terms of advice, I think, and I honestly can't remember which one of them said it, but in terms of advice around it will be okay. Don't worry about it. It will be okay. Which I guess to a degree is possibly a reflection of how I am with them. So it was almost like having it parroted back to me kind of thing. But it's that, it was that timely reminder that, you can do it. It will be okay. And I think that, the childlike way of perhaps looking at life, I think they do tend to have what we might describe as a more glass half full positive outlook, because they perhaps haven't seen some of the negative experiences that we perhaps have. So yeah, I think it would be about, it's that knowledge that it will be okay. It's all going to be fine. Yeah. Yeah. What about you?
And yeah, funnily enough, my example was something similar. So I was talking to Posey, my 4-year-old granddaughter, and we were talking about Guatemalan worry dolls,
Oh,
and
okay.
how her dad, when he was little, used to have the little, little bag of
Yeah.
Guatemalan worry dolls under your pillow, and you can tell your worries to the um to the dolls, and they take them away. So I
Yeah.
was sharing this story, and she asked me, so what do the worry dolls do with the worries? What happens to them?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's a very good question. That's a really good question. What do you think happens to them? And she said, I think they take them to the stars and then
Oh.
they bring them back as sparkle.
Oh,
And I was like,
wow.
I said, I think that's exactly what happens. And I thought that was completely just, that was her imagination. And as
Yeah.
you say, it's that kind of they'll be all right because from her perspective, if you've captured the worries, you need to do something because otherwise they're still worries,
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
she thought of it. So she needed them, she wanted them to be turned into something that weren't worries anymore and then given back. So you're replacing, and it's a bit like flipping a negative into a positive, isn't it?
Yeah,
But I
absolutely.
thought that was quite impressive for a 4-year-old. I was
Yeah,
mightily
definitely.
impressed with that response.
I'm very impressed. Go Posy.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Oh, love it. Okay, so my next question for you then is, what's your relationship like with time?
Um, yes. Time is tricky, isn't it?
Yes,
Um,
yeah,
I think for me, I would describe time like a TARDIS. So
yeah,
I recognize that it has a very defined structure and that there are rules around time so
yeah,
that it looks like, it's very defined. Uh, when you go inside the TARDIS, for anybody who hasn't ever watched Doctor Who from where it comes, um, the when you go inside the TARDIS, it's enormous, isn't it? It,
yes,
it goes on forever.
yeah. Looks much bigger.
Um,
Yeah,
and that's how I describe my relationship with time. And what that means in reality is I always think I've got more time than I have.
yeah,
Um, I do try and squash I do try and squash more than is reasonably possible into the time I have available. Um, and um, Yes. So rather like being a recovering people pleaser, I think I'm also probably a recovering time manager. So because I know that about myself,
yeah,
um, I try really hard not to squash too much in, because I'm one of those people who thinks, oh, on the way to, I could always do X, Y, and Z. And at the time, I think I've got lots of time. And actually, what happens is I underestimate how long it takes. Um, I'm geographically challenged, so I think I live about an hour from everywhere. I was having this conversation earlier. So
yeah,
I go, oh, I'm about an hour from Birmingham, which I am. I'm an hour. When you live in Oxfordshire, it's quite easy to get to places. And I
yeah,
just think everywhere's about an hour. And it's the about bit that can be tricky.
yeah.
So it's time management is something that I am always learning, I'm always intentional about, and I try really hard. And quite often I fail, but doesn't stop me trying again.
No, absolutely, and that's key, isn't it? And the other key for me is I think you've hit the nail on the head about being aware of it. I think it's really easy to go through life not really considering what your relationship with time is like. Um, and I've found it really interesting finding out what my relationship with time is like, because I've realized that my time bubble that I operate in is probably about a week. And I can see it in a linear fashion. I can see the week and I can cope with, what needs to go on within that week. Although generally speaking, I'll probably focus on a day at a time, so it perhaps gets it even smaller. But what I've recognized that means is that I do find it problematic to look too far into the future. So when I'm trying to make plans and fix my goals for business and for life, I sometimes find it really difficult to visualize way off in the future and what I want that to look like. And it can feel quite nebulous and vague. I imagine it like a sort of almost a ball of energy that's just constantly moving, but I can't quite make it have a defined shape. The way you've just defined the TARDIS, or described the TARDIS being at that defined shape of time. And as soon as I go too far out, it gets quite nebulous. And I also, something I've noticed, I really don't like being late. The problem is it happens a reasonable amount. And I hate it when it happens. And I think, oh no, I just want to get there on time. I don't want people to think I've been late and I haven't put enough priority on whatever this thing is I happen to be going to. And invariably, no one ever minds. People understand that traffic can happen, or that you left a bit later than planned for one reason or another. But yeah, I don't like arriving anywhere late. But I think when you know these things about yourself, exactly as you said, then you can do, find ways to manage that and try and make it work the best way that you can for you. So yeah, self-awareness is key, as with a lot of things, but particularly with time. Yeah. Okay, so your turn for another question then, please.
So I had dinner last week with the fabulous Joel, who was
Oh,
a guest
marvelous.
recently on our podcast,
Fabulous
and
guest.
he fabulous guest, and he made the most fabulous vegan, because he's vegan, as
Okay.
you might remember.
Yes,
He
yeah.
made the most delicious vegan curry for dinner, which was absolutely, and I am going to ask, I did ask him for the recipe. I'm going to nudge him,
Yeah.
remind him to send me the recipe, because it was absolutely just divine. So my question is, if you were preparing dinner for somebody who you thought was wonderful, a special guest, what would be your chosen main course that your signature, they call it, is it a signature dish if you're chefy? What would be your signature dish, Rachel?
Wow. Okay. That's an interesting one, because I'm not, I wouldn't consider myself to be a particularly accomplished cook. I'm all right. I have a kind of a set bank of things that I make, which the kids probably get bored of. But yeah, I'm not the most inventive when it comes to cooking. I'm the sort of person that, until I know how to make something, I generally, I need to follow a recipe kind of thing. Whereas my husband, he can just throw something together and it works. You know what I mean? He just knows which herbs and spices to add, and what's going to make it work, and all the rest of it. So I'm not as inventive. If I was to have a signature dish, it sounds really boring. Probably spaghetti bolognese, because I've had so many compliments on it. It's
I don't
nothing
think there's anything
exciting, but
boring about a good spaghetti bowl. A good ragu is hard to beat.
and this is the thing, because I do it. The what's the word I'm looking for? The what you might describe as the correct way. So you start off and you
Traditional.
yes, the traditional way. So I don't use a sauce out of a jar. It's made from scratch, and start with the carrots and the celery and all the rest of it, and the onion.
And you
Um,
saute them for 20 minutes until
yeah,
they've given you their lives.
absolutely, nice and soft. Um, so yeah, and it's a nice easy one to make. And so there have been a number of occasions, if people are around for dinner, particularly if it's because we're all going out somewhere, so we need a dinner that's kind of relatively speedy, not too complicated. And the compliments have been rather nice. So yeah, I think maybe that is my signature dish. It just feels a bit boring to say spaghetti bolognese, because there's nothing particularly difficult about it. But yeah,
And I think you make a really good point, is that actually when you make something and you love making it, and you follow, a tried and tested for, there's a reason that a really good spaghetti plate, I mean, they serve it in restaurants, don't they?
yeah,
There's a reason that it's popular, is because it's really tasty. And I have to say, mine would be, I love a fish pie. Absolutely love a
okay,
fish pie. I love eating it. I love serving it. And because you could do it different every time,
yeah,
depending on the combination of fish that you have and what cheese you use and all of that stuff. Um, so mine might doesn't sound very glamorous either, does it? But I absolutely love. Uh, Obviously, I would do a vegetarian version or vegan version.
yeah,
Um, if without the fish. If um, but it is that thing about actually cooking something that is really tasty
yeah,
for somebody that you care about is really good. So
yeah. Definitely cooked with love. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. Okay, right. So my final question for you, Jenny, is a really simple one. What are you grateful for today?
Oh, well, today it was very rainy, wasn't it? I don't know if it
Yes.
was with you, but it was very rainy and very miserable today. And I was out. I was on Mondays. I look after my grandchildren. So Posey,
Yes.
who's 4, and Albie, who's 16 months. And um, rain doesn't stop, things going on. So I'm
Yeah.
grateful for puddles today, because
Yes.
puddles were had made, quite there was a lot of them about, and the
Yes.
sheer joy of small children splashing in puddles is endless. They
Yeah.
just get so much pleasure, don't they, out of standing in puddles. So I'm incredibly grateful for puddles. I'm also incredibly grateful for um, warmth. So when you come back home, that you've got, you're warm and you're dry and you're cozy, and that you can sit and read stories. So we went to the library, we splashed in puddles all the way home, and then we spent a very cozy, warm afternoon reading stories, and making chocolate chip cookies. So I'm grateful for all of those things today.
Brilliant.
What
Sounds like a
about you, Rach?
fantastic day. Love the sound of that. Um, I'm grateful for a number of things today. One of which is that my husband is home this week, so that's made a real big difference in terms of just sharing out the responsibilities and balancing stuff, which has made a real difference because I didn't have time to go and do some food shopping that I needed to do during the day. But he got on with cooking, as I mentioned earlier. He's really good in the kitchen, and it meant I was able to go and do that while he was sorting the kids out, which that just made a real difference. So I'm super grateful for that. And I'm also really grateful that I was able to finish my assignment on time. I'm doing a level 2 qualification in self-harm and suicide awareness and prevention, and it was a bit touch and go as to whether I might need to ask for an extension. So when I finished, I felt really grateful that I'd put the effort in to get the assignment finished, and finishing it on time, particularly given my relationship with time, not being able to too far ahead and plan too far ahead. I was really pleased to get it done. So yeah, feeling really grateful for that. It's been a good day. Lots achieved.
Well done, because juggling, isn't it? I think part of
Yes,
the relationship with time and gratitude is that
absolutely.
ability to juggle and try and fit lots of things in, which I know you do every week.
Yeah. Sometimes to a ridiculous degree, yes. So, Jenny, what's your final question for me?
So my final question is a Reedy question. So it's kind of brought us back to quotations, hasn't it?
Okay.
So my final question is, what is the last book or a recent book that you read that really kind of made you think, or made you, yeah, gosh, that's a really good read. I would recommend that to somebody else.
Okay. I'll just get that typed in and on the screen. So, last book I read that I would recommend. Oh gosh, I've been reading a number of things actually, and not reading as I'd got into the habit of reading again at the back end of last year and haven't been reading as much. But I have really enjoyed reading the Mythos trilogy of books by Stephen Fry. I find Greek mythology quite fascinating, and the parallels. Obviously, it's just that it's mythology, but the parallels of the relationship between the gods and man, and find the whole thing absolutely fascinating. And you see from that where lots of our language has come from. Again, I find that something quite fascinating. So I would definitely recommend those. Mythos in particular, the first one, I couldn't put it down. You know, it was something I would really recommend reading. It was really, really good. And the other thing I've really been enjoying reading, actually, I'm a huge fan of Sir Terry Pratchett. I've loved his books for a very, very long time. I was fortunate enough to meet him once at a book signing. Still got the book with his signature in it. And you know, I've been trying for years to get the kids to be interested in them, because I've got most of them, so you know they can borrow them. And it finally seems to have taken. So I'm currently reading with the youngest, reading Truckers, which is one of the children's books that he wrote. And I have to admit, I hadn't actually read that one previously myself. And I would highly recommend it for children. It's, you know, I've always loved his wit, and the way he can take something normal and mundane about life and describe it in a book in a way that's humorous and, you know, interesting to read. And he basically describes this world where that there's these gnomes that they basically live in a department store, but they don't really realize it's a department store. To them, it's the world. And it's just a fascinating insight into some of the things that we as humans feel are so important, and actually maybe they're not. So I would highly recommend it's the Bromeliad trilogy. I think it's great for kids. So yeah, that's my recommendations.
Oh, that sound. I used to love mythology as a child. Well, and you know, so and I haven't read that. I haven't read those, so I will add those to my list. I've just been reading Soul for Happy, Mo Gawdat.
I love that book.
So just such fabulous book, isn't it? Really, really, really enjoyed that. And I recently heard Daniel Priestley speak at an event I was at, and he key person of influence is another really great book and actually I'm quite an Audible fan, so because I spend quite a lot of time in the car, and I like to have stories to listen to or books to read, you know, to listen to in the car. So that's always a great thing for me. And I tell the story of my my English teacher when I was young. I used to read read anything, and because we lived abroad, quite often the British Council Library didn't have a huge selection. So Alistair MacLean or Mills and Boon was kind of your lot.
Blimey.
So I kind of punted for Alistair MacLean, and I had this fabulous English teacher at school, and she said to me, you know, what if, rather than telling me not to read them, she said, what if in between each Alistair MacLean, I added a choice, you know, a good work, a kind of piece of fabulous, you know, writing that you might enjoy. And I said, oh, that sounds like a good thing. I'm up for that. And she chose the most amazing books like The Moonstone and Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights and all sorts of fabulous books. So I kind of alternated, basically, you know, a bit of tat with a good work, and it's something that I've done ever since. So I still do that. So I might read a bit, you know, chick lit, and then kind of then a good work. So I had written this I'd said about, I use her as an example of leaders. What's good leadership look like? And it's people who've influenced your life in a kind of longevity. And I had used her as an example, and one of my school friends who still is in touch with her had printed out my copy that I'd written on LinkedIn and given it to her and said, this is the influence that you had, and you might not have known that you had this influence, but I'd like you. So I thought that was really lovely.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Oh, I love that. The power of books.
The power of books and the joy of reading, isn't it? The joy of reading when you that love of literature never goes away, I think, once you've established it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm right with you on that, definitely. Yeah. Well, that's another fantastic show. Thank you very much, Jenny. It's been lovely spending time with you. And our next show will be on the 8th of May. Can you believe we're nearly in May already? The next show is on the 8th of May, and we have the fabulous David Lilly as our guest, who I can't wait for this conversation. David's got some fantastic thoughts about well-being and the importance of all the various elements of well-being. So I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation. We might drop a few more hints in some of our social media posts between now and then, but do join us on the 8th, where we will be live. We'll be back live again, recording with David, and we'll see where that journey takes us. So thank you, Jenny. It's been lovely.
It's been very exciting. I can't wait to be. I'm slightly worried about the question that David's got for us, but I'm always really excited about the guests we have. We have some fantastic guests, and as ever, we have really clear criteria for our guests, so that they have to be inspiring, they have to be brilliant, and actually they have to be making some influence, some change in the world for the better, some positive change in the world. So really, really looking forward to talking with him, and as you say, we might be sharing a few more hints, and as we go through the next 2 weeks. So I think that's us for this evening. If it's Wednesday, this lunchtime, and as you said earlier, and in the podcast, whenever you're listening, we're really grateful for your ears, and we look forward to any comments, any suggestions that you might have, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Fantastic. Take care, everyone. Take care, Jenny.
Bye-bye. Take care, Rachel.